Hi, this is Phil with just one final thought on this very beautiful, very powerful and very significant book, the Song of Solomon, and that is to discuss with you briefly what I've called here a theological understanding. Now, I've had an emphasis, as you, I trust, have noted, in that we should interpret the book in the context of the literature that it is. This is true for all of the Bible. Identify the genre and then interpret a Bible book within that genre. And my focus has been the more literal approach, whether it is seen as a drama or not, whether it's seen as poems, to understand this is a book that is celebrating sexuality within the marriage covenant. So you may be saying, what about the Song of Solomon being used in expressing our love for God, being used in worship, being used in a devotional way in expressing our love for God? Well, we can reflect on what I've called a theological reading, because in the Bible marriage is a metaphor of the relationship between God and the people of God, both in the New and the Old Testament, and I'm sure you're aware of that. God in the Old Testament identifies himself as the husband and the people of Israel as his wife. Malachi 2:14. Marriage is identified as a covenant, and we can compare the covenant that God made with Israel in Exodus 19 following. And so often that covenant that was made way back there in the Sinai desert is likened to the marriage covenant. So when God wants to speak to Israel through Hosea, he uses Hosea's marriage as an example, as a metaphor to his people. And as you will see, if you're not familiar with this story, how powerful that is. In Ezekiel 16 and 23, it is quite graphic in the sense of sexual terms, and you'll explore those too. Jeremiah, the opening prophecies use the marriage language to describe the relationship between God and Israel and the unfaithfulness of the people as those who are breaking the marriage covenant. Isaiah 54 speaks about Israel as a wife that has been forsaken and been taken again. So in the Old Testament this is a very real image, and I want to recognize that in the New Testament. You'll be familiar how Paul in Ephesians 5 uses the one flesh language of Genesis that obviously is applied to the marriage relationship. He applies it to Christ and the church. And the imagery in Revelations 19 is an image of a bride and a marriage feast. And so in both Old and New Testament we see this imagery. Just to say a few things, and that is, even though this imagery is used of Christ and the church, it is one of many metaphors that are used. There is the church as the body, of course. That is used a lot in the New Testament. And a temple, a building, etc., etc. And so to say that when it comes to the Song of Solomon, let's accept that the book is not, firstly, it's not written as an allegory or a metaphor. And reading any of the Song of Solomon in this way shouldn't be considered as more spiritual and the natural approach played down as if it's insignificant. This is the right interpretation of the Song of Solomon. But I want to be quick to say there is a place for this book to be used devotionally in our love relationship with God. But I would suggest to you, let's see the whole book like this. Let's be careful not to take the individual details, many of them which are quite sexually graphic within the poetry that's used, and try and push those in some spiritual way, but rather take the book as a whole and the commitment that's expressed. Let's use that in our devotion and be blessed in that way, should we feel we want to use the Song of Solomon devotionally.